How long were you trying to operate the platform with limited to no traffic before you stumbled upon this lead generator that started to work?
Like a year and a half. And it was like, let's say 15 months. So I quit my job August 2018, didn't make any money really like for 15 months. If you look at my tax returns, it was like 14K for 2019. It was horrible. I was burning a little cash. Thankfully, I live at home, so I didn't burn too much. I was able to cover my minimum. Maybe I was down a couple hundred every month. If I did not live at home, I would not have quit my job because then I would have rent to pay. And if I were to go back, I would have waited to quit when I actually had huge amount of savings, like I'm talking about 100K plus, or when I actually had some revenue going. Like I was making somewhere around 2 to 5K a month, but I did it for 6 straight months. And I would have waited to grow my team. Look, the game is so hard. I've been at it 6.5 years, ups and downs. I had 2 jobs in between. I got fired from both of them because I'm a crappy worker. It's tough. If I were to look back, I should have got a job in 2021. If you're ever looking for a business partner, and this is how you know if you yourself are meant to be an entrepreneur, the best business, you need to have a business partner that's willing to do work for $0 an hour for an undetermined amount of time. If they're not willing to work $0 an hour, because I had business partners like, oh, we're not making any money off of it. I was like, dude, I wasn't making money for a year straight. We got to get to a point where you can earn money. If I had a full-time job, I'll even contribute money so they can survive. But most people are selfish. So you need to find someone who's willing to like, hey, I'm not getting paid, but I'm willing to work at this. Obviously not forever, but for an undetermined amount of time. They have to be okay with this unknown payoff. I had a business partner who barely did any work. We're not friends anymore. He used to be one of my best friends, and we're not friends anymore. And people say, get over it. Some people say, oh, this and that. And I was like, I'm not going to get over it. I quit my job. I had a tax return of 14K while this guy is making 6 figures traveling the world. I was like, people are allowed to have that, but it just changes a lot where you have people who you thought were your friend. And it's not necessarily they're bad people, but they just weren't good to me. And I think that's something that is really hard. I wish I had those tough conversations earlier, and I wish I had cut this off instead of giving people a chance and giving them too much leeway.
Behind the Hustle. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Behind the Hustle, the show where we fight back against success porn on social media. If you're anything like me, you're sick and tired of being bombarded with endless success stories, and you know they're just the tip of the iceberg. I interview successful entrepreneurs about the realities of their journey, the setbacks and failures, mental health consequences, and most importantly, how they endured for a long time before ultimately finding success. No matter where you are in your entrepreneurial journey, hopefully this is a reminder that you're not alone when things get dark and a source of motivation for you to keep going. My guest today is Jonaed Iqbal. Jonaed is the founder of nodegree.com, a recruiting platform for people without college degrees. 6 years in, and he's built a big presence in the online job recruiting space with 45,000 LinkedIn followers, 13,000 Twitter followers, and over 300,000 podcast downloads. But it was a game of inches. He, like every entrepreneur, has endured an onslaught of rejection for years on end, but has found a way to stay in the game. Jonaed, thank you for responding to my Reddit post. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here and share the behind the scenes. I have a Reddit account that's over 15 years old. So I've been using Reddit since I was in high school in like the 2007, 2008 era.
Yeah, you've seen the early days. I actually went through your Reddit profile to do some research for this podcast, and I saw that you have like 100,000 comment karma points. So you've been in the game for a long time.
I try to add value to the community, try to share my experience because I've learned a lot from thoughtful Reddit comments.
Can I ask, before we get into the actual interview, because I brought up Reddit and then you kind of reacted to it, how has Reddit changed from like 2008 to the mid 2010s to now?
So Reddit had several phases. They had a huge amount of growth. There was a site called Dig, and a lot of users migrated during that time. I was there pre-Dig. I was on Dig, right? I was in high school. I always liked online forums and reading comments and reading discussion. I went over to Reddit for whatever issue. What's really changed is that first change, you just had more activity. It did lower the quality a little. You always get lower quality as more users come in. And the big issue is that subreddits have to have good moderation, or else all subreddits go towards memes. Right? Because you can write 10 paragraphs of things that solve life, but to react to a meme, you look at it, comment, all done within 10 to 20 seconds. And if you're just commenting and liking, it's done within a fraction of 5. So it's like you as a user have to be mindful. I will say that there's still very good small subreddits. That's where you learn a lot. You just get a lot lower overall quality. So you have to dig a lot more to get the quality that you want sometimes.
That's interesting that you say that because I still feel that Reddit is super heavily moderated. I'm more of a recent Reddit user. I made my account in the mid to late 2010s and only started becoming more active as I've been trying to promote myself and my business with the value first approach. You have to, but dude, I've gotten temporary bans for asking the moderators if something is okay. Like I'll go and read the rules and I'm like, I want to do something that's kind of on the fence. Why don't I be a good Samaritan and ask them? And just for asking, they're like, boom, temporary ban. It's not a big deal, but it's just like Reddit is unique in that regard. They still police it pretty heavily now.
Remember, each subreddit is different. So each subreddit has a different moderation team. Some are very nice and open, and then some are just very strict. It's the nature of online, right? People like having power and they like flexing that power. I wish more users would ask if this is okay.
Yeah, because I'm like trying to play the game correctly, like dance for the algorithm, so to speak. I know in this case it's a human being, the moderator, but they represent the algorithm in a way. I would go so far as to say some don't just flex their power, they're outright dicks.
They are.
That's just Reddit for you. You got to have a thick skin. I think a good place to start would be with your early career. Why did you leave corporate America?
I wanted to leave corporate before I even started. I was on Reddit over 10 years ago, August 2014. Someone asked, for those of you without a college degree who make over six figures, what do you do and how'd you get the job? People were sharing things like, I'm a claims adjuster, a database administrator, I work in elevator repair, or I'm an analyst. And it was like, how'd you get the job? My uncle, my cousin, my friend. These are all jobs that no one grows up and says, I want to be a claims adjuster. Most people fell into these careers. So I'm like, what if you don't have the uncle, cousin, or friend? What do? Are you doomed to just work crappy retail jobs and work your way up? And I was like, why can't I be the uncle, cousin, or friend? So I searched up domains, put an inquiry for nodegree.com. We got a response back and I bought it for $1,500 split between two buddies. Now, from there, I was interning. So I had a job and I don't come from a wealthy family. So I was like, look, I need to have this internship, but I want to keep building this. And all throughout work, I was building it. I used to be an actuary. And for those of you who don't know, actuaries take exams and they're really tough math exams that take 100 to 300 hours of studying while having a background in math. And so as an actuary, the type of job I had, you have to pass exams every 18 months to keep your job. And then the clock would reset. If you passed an exam within the first 6 months, you would get another clock, but then you have to pass an exam by month 24. If you pass an exam in the last 6-month period, you have another 18 months. So I passed an exam and then do work. And then I extended it. I was like, I don't want to spend hundreds of hours on these exams. I want to focus on my business. And so I was like, let me get a regular job where I don't have to work on studying for months and months at a time. And so I got another job, but I was always building something. Eventually I came to a point where I got it. I'm in a fortunate situation. I live at home with my parents. So I know I pay them a little rent, but nothing crazy. And that's the only reason I've been able to do my business. A lot of people don't realize if you're not wealthy, you have to really leverage your family connections.
Understood. So just for a little bit more background, it sounds like you had a math background in college, if I looked at your credentials correctly, and that took you into a field where even though you had these entrepreneurial desires, you couldn't act on them because the demands of the field were too high. So you made a good decision to get a different job to relieve some of the demands on your time, and you are living with your parents to save money. Both of those things make sense. But did you not want to be in corporate, and why did you want to start your own business?
It's not like I hated corporate, but I am always just learning, reading, doing other things. For me, it's more about impact. I really wanted to make a difference, and I still do. That kind of decides what I end up doing. I had no desire to climb the corporate ladder. I saw corporate as a means to an end. I don't like the bureaucracy and the corporate politics. Some people thrive in it, but that's not me. I wanted to do something that had impact, that had change. I didn't want to make spreadsheets for a boring insurance company. That's not exciting. Whereas being able to get someone a job who's only worked at retail and now they have their first job that pays $60K, that's amazing. Taking someone who's never broken six figures in their life and getting their first job at 130 to 140K that doesn't have a degree, like that's what drives me.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty noble cause. So you have this idea. What were your expectations of where you wanted to take it? Were you like, I have this idea, I'm just going to keep building it or see where it goes? Or were you like, I think that I can help X people with no degrees get employed at a certain level every month, and it will take me so many years and this much effort and time to get there? Did you think about it that way? Or was it kind of just like putting one foot in front of the other?
Oh man, dude, I'm crazy. I'm delusional. So when I got that, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be like the #1 site for people without degrees, and I'm going to have a blog and be rich. It never ends up working that way. And then it was a lot of one step forward. I still have that dream where it's like, hey, I'm competing with Indeed, Monster, LinkedIn. I want to bootstrap. It could take me 10, 20, 30 years, but I'm willing to do it. Most people don't realize that you have to really be in it for a long haul. Thankfully, it's self-sustaining. I can pay myself. I have a small team, but I like to obviously get more revenue so I can pay myself more, grow the team, and focus on things I don't have enough time for right now.
Right. So that all makes sense. So then getting the business started, you have this idea, you want to build it on the side. How did you validate the idea? A lot of people have ideas that they get very passionate about, clearly like you are, but it could just be an idea or a solution looking for a problem. Ultimately, that's not what ended up transpiring, but how did you validate the idea and confirm to yourself that people actually had a problem that needed solving with this no degree concept?
There are a lot of jobs that don't require degrees on Indeed. People need jobs. People lack awareness about how to get those jobs. And then there are over 40,000 job websites. Some of them are so niche, they're like black CPAs in Philly, right? Job boards get that niche.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? There's so many job websites. The issue is if you don't have a college degree and you go on Indeed and let's say you're trying to be a secretary, some of these jobs will be like, oh, you need a PhD to be a secretary and order lunch for us. Whereas a website like nodegree.com, they may require some certifications or experience, but they're not going to say you must have a degree.
Okay. So just to get back to the first part of your answer, how'd you validate it? You said, well, Indeed exists. It's like, okay, but isn't that a reason to not start the business? Like Indeed exists. Why should no degree exist? Like, how is no degree different?
Great question. Indeed is a very general job board, and it does not have specialized content catered to people without degrees. The big issue for most people without degrees is they don't know the job exists. You can have a search engine, but if you don't know how to use it, if you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to go anywhere. So it's okay. You're considering becoming an electrician. How do you get started? What is the career path? Indeed is not making content on how to become an electrician. My niche was to cater to people without degrees and really talk about the pathways and focus on content.
So if I understand correctly, your idea was to surface this knowledge to the people who need these jobs, and that would drive traffic around your site, and then you could be a matchmaker as a business.
Yep.
All right. What were your first steps to get the business started?
What were the first steps? It was a lot of research. I was reading a lot from experience. I was looking at other job boards, seeing how they operated. I actually have a mentor with the job board. Funny enough, I listened to him in a podcast 2018, and somewhere on my desk, he sent me a card and his autograph book. He's a nice guy, always willing to answer questions. So I validated the idea. Then I started marketing on LinkedIn. It was going okay, but I wasn't necessarily getting a lot of traffic. I met someone who was writing resumes, and he was like, hey, Jonaed, you should start writing resumes. And I started writing resumes, and the first one I was like free. The first few people, someone wasn't getting a job. I got him a job at Amazon. Someone else, I got a job at Tesla, and people started paying me. And then I really started learning a lot. And then No Degree transformed to a more career development company, because before job boards just post job, I was learning a lot about how to write a resume, how to find a job search right, and I was getting in depth. And so that's what really gave me an edge over my competitor.
Understood. So basically you put up like a basic job board, right? Where it had all the basic functionality, like here are jobs, you can apply for them. And then you tried to get traffic and it was hard. And then you stumbled upon this lead magnet mechanism. I have a couple questions about the initial stages of building the platform, but how long were you trying to operate the platform with limited to no traffic before you stumbled upon this lead generator that started to work?
Like a year and a half, and it was like, let's say 15 months. So I quit my job August 2018, didn't make any money really like for 15 months. If you look at my tax returns, it was like $14K for 2019. It was horrible. And then I stumbled upon, I could do resumes. The reason behind resumes, I can learn about people's careers, get paid for it, and then make money. It's helpful for my industry. So I'll become an expert. That'll be an advantage I have over these other companies. All these other companies sit on data. They don't sit on individual stories.
That is very interesting because there are some lead magnets that are so powerful. You learn a lot, you provide value, you get credibility, and you drive traffic to your main business, right? And when you can find one of those things, it just pays to invest all of your time and effort into scaling those out, which is what I'm doing in my business now. And it sounds like that was a pretty effective way for you to start growing. So lasering in on those super early days when you quit your job, you said you quit, you made no money, or you made little money. Two questions. What was the state of the product when you quit your job? That's question number one. And question number two is, where did the $14,000 of income come from?
The product, we already had it developed. They're job board SaaS. We use a job board SaaS, and the product is developed, but you need traffic. Traffic is what allows you to sell the product. You have a product, but you need traffic to sell the product. Like, you need to approach your company and say, hey, I have 10,000 visitors a month. Come check out my website. I didn't have that. It was fully developed. I had an ATM business with a friend, so I was making a little money off that. Nothing too crazy, maybe like 1,000 to 1,200 a month. And I did odd things, like I think I helped someone move for some money. I like tutored. I just did whatever I could to make some money.
You were hustling on the side.
I was flipping a couple of things and hustling for whatever.
Let's get some cash in the door.
Yeah, I was networking. I was doing whatever I could. But it's when I started doing resumes that I was starting to hit those 5K months.
Yeah. So we'll get to the resumes in a second. How did you get your first recruiters on the platform? Because it's a marketplace, so it's chicken egg, right?
Yeah.
You need traffic to get recruiters, but the reverse is true. How did you get the recruiters?
So I didn't even focus on the recruiters. I just focused on getting people who were looking for jobs. I was just doing resumes and helping people find jobs. I was teaching people how to find jobs themselves.
So it wasn't even a job board to start. It was just a web presence that that was where people got directed when you hit them with a resume lead magnet, right?
The job board exists. However, it wasn't getting traffic. I was active on LinkedIn, and that's where people were finding me. From there, they would check out the website, but they'd really focus on my LinkedIn profile. I was gaining recommendations. Right now, I have 10 recommendations. Over there, I got my first 10, my first 20. As I started getting more recommendations, I started raising my prices.
When you say the job board existed, like there were jobs available where did you get the job?
Jobs, typically you're scraping off other websites. So a lot of job board sites allow, when you click on a job in any website, it goes to another website. So that's what I was doing.
Understood.
I get a couple of cents from Indeed, and now it's on Zip. I think I use ZipRecruiter now, but in the current state, it actually scrapes from a lot of startups.
Okay, so you put up this minimum viable product with a couple of scrape jobs, and that was just to generate credibility and show that you were a real business. Then you focused on this service-based lead generation tactic, and that started to get traction. Before we get into that, you said you did an ATM business on the side.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
One thing I'll tell people is don't get into the ATM business. I don't recommend it. My friend, who's also a hustler, had a bunch of ATMs. He bought it. He was doing research into it. And ATM business, you make money off the transaction fee. He had 14, 15 of them. Some of them were in Queens, Manhattan. So he was like, yo, can you fill up some of them and we'll work out something? So I would withdraw like 5, 10 to 20,000. I put in 10 to 20,000 into the business, and I'd go to the bank, withdraw, deposit it, and that's how you'd make money. However, one reason I don't like the ATM business is that you can't easily outsource it. If I have an ATM business, you can't just hire anyone to have access to a bank account and deposit money. Now, you can't also hire someone to hand over the money, because look, if you give them 5,000, they run away, you've lost your profit for several months. Then I'm in New York City, so you can't have a gun. You have to be very mindful of your surroundings and all that stuff. And you just don't make a lot. And now you have to refill an ATM every 1 to 2 weeks. So we had about, let's say, 30K in the account. That allowed us to, for most ATMs, we were able to get away with 1 week to 12 to 13 days. If we had 60,000, we could get away with 2 weeks to 14 to 20 days. As you put more money, your ROI on the cash goes down, but you have more time. I also couldn't really travel too long, because if you travel too long, ATM runs out. So it's a business. If you're old and you have a lot of cash, cool, but I wouldn't recommend it. You can't outsource it. Scaling it just gives more headache. We had several bank accounts get shut down because banks don't like ATM accounts, because they make absolutely no money off of us, right? We're always withdrawing money using our services. You got to call the bank ahead. Hey, I'm going to withdraw like 8,000. And be like, oh, we can only have 4 that we can give you in 20s. So you have to go to 2, 3 banks. These accounts get shut down. When you try to open another account, they're like, oh, we don't service that account. Oftentimes, people who have ATMs, they have other businesses. So they have other businesses that the bank will be like, all right, you have these other businesses, we'll let you open this account, or else they just don't like that. I don't recommend it. Do a vending machine business instead. You could hire someone to fill up the machine. And if someone steals your chips, it's whatever, let them steal your chips. It's not the end of the world.
The ATM business sounds like a horrible one.
It's not good. Again, people who have like several delis who have cash-based businesses, it's good for them. old retiree, couple ATMs, good for them. I would tell people just focus either on vending machines or credit card processing. Just much more remote, lucrative, and scalable.
So between when you quit your job to work on No Degree full time and when you first started getting traction with the resume service, that period was about like a year or something.
Yeah.
Burn treading water or making money?
I was burning a little cash. Thankfully, I live at home, so I didn't burn too much. I was able to cover my minimum. Maybe I was down a couple hundred every month. If I did not live at home, I would not have quit my job because then I would have rent to pay. And if I were to go back, I would have waited to quit when I actually had huge amount of savings, like I'm talking about 100K plus, or when I actually had some revenue going. Like I was making somewhere around 2 to 5K a month, but I did it for 6 straight months. And I would have waited to grow my team.
Got it. You took a lot of smart actions to enable yourself to stay in the game, right? That's how I introduced the podcast. You did a lot of things that allowed you to endure. Even though this period until you got traction was only a year long, getting through that year is tough, right? Because a year is a long time when you have no results. It's obviously motivating when you stumble across a lead magnet that works because you're like, let's gear up. Let's invest in this lead magnet. I have a lever I can pull to scale this business right now. But during that 1 year period, a lot of people would probably shut down shop because they either run out of money or get demotivated. But you took some actions that I think people can learn from. You gave yourself every possible chance to last a year without results. Would you agree?
Yeah. And look, I thank my parents. They probably hate me for that, but you have to leverage it because if you look at a lot of these entrepreneurs, they don't share that they come from wealthy families. If they fail, they could go back. And I don't come from a wealthy family, but at least I could live with my parents and we have space in my house that I could do what I need to do. If you're poor, save that money. All the poor entrepreneurs that I know do well live at home for some time and they save. One of the kids I mentor, his parents are well off, but he's living at home. He has 100K saved, 2 years working, just living at home and being smart about it instead of living outside, paying rent and losing that money.
Another thing that I truly believe, there's a spectrum of how well off you are. Some people have a lot of privilege, some have less. Regardless of where you sit on that spectrum, it's stupid not to play whatever cards you're dealt. In your case, you have the opportunity to go home, save that money and live with your parents. Other people might not have that, right? I'm not saying that you're overly privileged by any stretch. That's not what I mean. It's just, It's smart to just, like if you had any leg up or any lever you can pull, the game's already hard enough.
Yeah, look, the game is so hard. I've been at it 6.5 years, ups and downs. I had 2 jobs in between. I got fired from both of them because I'm a crappy worker. It's tough. If I were to look back, I should have got a job in 2021. I should have focused on getting a job because the big issue is like you have business partners, and unfortunately, my business partners were full time. The big issue is when you have business partners who have jobs, they don't know what it is, right? They just think they're just hanging around. You get to have a flexible schedule. They don't realize it. And if I were to ever go back, I would have not had business partners, or I would have focused on having business partners who truly understand or cut them out early. I see it all the time. Like the person who's in it full time often gets the short end of the stick, while the people who are in it part time while having a full time job, I had a business partner who maybe put in 1 to 3 hours a week at most for 2 years straight. And there were times that he put almost 0 hours for months at a time. You partner with people you trust, you partner with friends, and you think just because someone's a good friend means that they're going to be a good business partner. But the thing is, when someone's a business partner, their habits impact you, their lack of savings impact you, how they approach their day impacts you. And it's like a marriage. And that's something you really have to consider.
Yeah, man. I can speak to that a little bit. Those are some really valuable points. Was your business partner that was working part-time an equal equity partner in the business? Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Also, if you know any entrepreneurs who went through a period of real struggle or failure before becoming successful, let me know in the comments. I'd love to interview them. The more stories we can tell on this channel, the more entrepreneurs will be inspired to keep going when it gets dark and achieve the freedom we all want in life. All right, back to the video.
At one point, I ended up getting more equity, but let me tell you, equity doesn't matter. You could have 80% of the company. If there's only so much one person can do, someone could have 20%, but if they're only putting a few hours a week, how are you going to scale that? Unless they're so productive or they're doing something so magical in those few hours, it's just not worth it. I'd rather go 50-50 with someone who's putting in 20 plus hours a week.
Yeah, I completely agree. I personally am not comfortable partnering with someone on a venture that's anything other than 50-50, right? Like I want 50-50, I want my share, but I want them to be fully motivated by having 50% of the upside. And I also want them to be held accountable because they have 50% of the upside, right? Those are two really important things. As soon as you make it 51-49, all of a sudden you introduce psychology that doesn't need to be there. I totally agree with that.
Can I share one thing?
Yeah.
If you're ever looking for a business partner, and this is how you know if you yourself are meant to be an entrepreneur, the best business, you need to have a business partner that's willing to do work for $0 an hour for an undetermined amount of time. If they're not willing to work $0 an hour, because I had business partners like, oh, we're not making any money off of it. I was like, dude, I wasn't making money for a year straight. We got to get to a point where you can earn money. If I had a full-time job, I'll even contribute money so they can survive. But most people are selfish. So you need to find someone who's willing to like, hey, I'm not getting paid, but I'm willing to work at this. Obviously not forever, but for an undetermined amount of time. They have to be okay with this unknown payoff. And that's something. And if you're not willing to work for $0 an hour, because businesses have highs and lows, you're going to sometimes not make money. Are you going to work on something that's not going to pay off right now, but can potentially pay off? And are you willing to keep at it for some time?
I completely agree. We're in a bit of an echo chamber because I had my last business. I had two business partners and differing experiences with both of them. So I have extensive thoughts on the nature of starting a business with someone. And now going into my next venture, I have a couple potential business partners I may engage with. There's so many things that people need to just accept upfront or just not engage, right? One of them is like, you need to work for no results for an undetermined amount of time. The way that you hedge that is like, you say, okay, if we can't find product market fit or we can't validate, right, within a set period of time, 3, 6, 9 months, whatever it may be, we agree that we're going to have a conversation about continuing. But if you can't accept that there will be no money or potentially no results, and you just have to keep trying things for a certain amount of time, it's just a losing game to partner with someone who doesn't have that mentality. Number two, I worked with someone who had a full-time job. He's one of my best friends, like great guy, and he contributed fully. This is not a comment on him, but going forward, I don't think I would want to partner with someone where I'm full-time and they're part-time, even if they're contributing a lot when they're part-time. And I say that because there's something about being full-time that creates a sense of urgency and a level of urgency that you can't really get anywhere else.
I completely understand, right? Because being full-time in a business, there's a flexibility that you have. He can't just take a meeting at 1 p.m. with someone because he has restrictions and all that. So look, it's one of those things that people really have to think about. You really have to think about what's going to work for your business. Oftentimes getting that person full-time is what's needed.
Let's move along to when you first started getting traction with the resume building. Where did the business go from there? You'd been doing it for about a year full-time. You start getting traction. Walk me through the next chapter of the business.
Yeah, dude, I was doing resumes. I had this lead gen source. I was in this specific program that was feeding me resume leads. Let's say I was getting like 100 leads, maybe 5 to 10 would respond, and then maybe I'd get a resume. So I was charging like 300 and I was making like 5K. I was getting 15 and 20 resumes a month. COVID happened right then. So resumes decreased, but it went back up to speed. And I started a virtual events company with some people I met on LinkedIn. And I used the resume business to fund the virtual events business. So I was the one paying for the platform. I was like, I'll fund the cash. And when we had virtual events, I would fund the workers so they could get paid through the resume business. I had flexibility in that I could choose to do how many resumes I wanted. So as the virtual event business got busy, I did fewer resumes and I raised my prices. And when the virtual event wasn't as busy, I'd do more resumes. So I had this flexibility. And that business, the virtual event business, it took 4 to 6 months to get serious traction, but then we were hitting 30 to 50, 60, 70K months. And we even had a month that had 100K. I paid off my debt. I saved money and just really learned a lot about business through that time frame.
What happened with the events business? 100K a month is pretty legit.
Yeah, I had a crazy partner. We had 4 partners. One of the partners was absolutely crazy. His like personality changed once we started making money. One time he voted himself in. One day he changed his title to CEO and he tried to gaslight the rest of the partners. Hey, you guys voted me in as CEO. And no, we didn't. Like one of those, just like he thought he was responsible for everything. And he hated the fact that I have the receipts. you could check who funded the business, who paid the workers, right? Who paid for that account, and all that. Then we split the company into two. He took his clients, we took ours. We're doing well. The big issue is, man, as fast as the virtual events business grew, it died once in-person came back. Part of it's because we weren't the best salespeople. We were good at sales, but we couldn't do cold outbound like that. And the other reason is executives don't like virtual events. Executives like physical events because when they go to physical events, their vendors take them out on these offsites. They get to meet their friends. They often have spouses who take care of things or nannies and all that. So for them, it's like vacation. Whereas like a regular person going on like these conferences is like work. Oh, who's going to take care of my dog? Who's going to take care of my kid? Can I take the dog to the kennel? It's like 100 something a day. There's a lot of coordination. Executives don't like virtual events because they're so far removed from the average person. They love getting away.
What was the business model for the events business?
We would charge for events. You have a conference that you want to do virtually. We charge for the setup. We charge for the tech support, charge for the planning, and events could run anywhere from $2 to $3K up to $20K. And we had one client pay $50K for an event. One client was paying us $5 to $30K a month because we would partner with other agencies and provide them tech support. They'd get the clients and we had a team of tech support and we would supply them on a month-to-month basis. So we were getting good recurring money through that.
How did you get leads for that business?
So when we would do, it was all word of mouth and referrals. We'd get leads from the event platform company. It was a good mix. And then every event we did, people were like, oh, the tech support is good. Who set up the event? Can you introduce them to us? Every event we did, all the attendees were potential leads.
So that makes sense. But what I'm hearing is, oh, the resume business goes down. So you are scrambling for other ways to make money. Yeah. Is that what's happening? And how do you, go ahead.
Yeah. And remember, resume business was only down for 2 months. I was still making money. It was just that this was a crazy opportunity that you had to capitalize due to market timing, and we kept on doing it. I always still had the resumes going because I would cater things around, and I always had that going. I would scale it up and down as needed, depending on how busy it was. But there were sometimes like the virtual events, like I would do no resumes because this is like a 70 to 100K month. We need to manage these teams. We need to go in. We need to manage the clients and all that. It was just referrals. We provided high quality service. We had designed the layouts. My business partner had a niche skill. He was one of the few people who could actually design these layouts that didn't look like the cartoon, and people loved that. We would make a recurring income from that. And as people did layouts, they're like, hey, can you do some other stuff for us? It was just a well-oiled machine.
When you say layouts, you mean the background?
It's not a virtual. So it was like, imagine a breakout of Zoom breakout rooms. So it's like a conference. You can double click to go to different tables, and each table is its own video call. So we'd have like nice layouts that matched their branding that didn't look like a cartoon. Yeah.
They would be in a physical space?
After the podcast, I'll share the screen. They felt like they were in a physical space because they would click and it's, oh, wow, there's the logos. It didn't feel like a Zoom call, even though technically it's still a Zoom call in a different way, but they didn't feel like it was a Zoom call.
So then how did you react so quickly and get the business up and running? Did you formulate a business plan, or did you find your partners? How did this get going?
Let me tell you. So me and two guys, we used to hang out on Zoom for like hours. We got to figure out. We would hang out 2, 3 a.m. And then the platform was going to raise their prices. We were looking into it. The platform was going to raise their prices. So we're like, oh, crap. Let's get this unlimited plan. At the time, it was like $400 a month, and they raised it to $900. So we got it. I was like, yo, I'm buying the account. We'll figure something out later. We can figure out the splits, but I'm buying this account. We were just hanging out in this virtual area, and we had an ongoing event space, and people would come in and out, and then we started getting closer to the company. We did like a small event. I remember we did a small event. We got paid like $250, and we're like, yes. $250, and now we look at it and we charge like $500 an hour later. We started doing that. The reason we were able to grow so quickly is one of my business partners had experience in business. He had a 3D printing business. I was reading all about business. I was getting some traction. So it was like, you had two great people. We had two great people come together, lightning in a bottle, and we were able to take it to the next level.
Right. Interesting, man. So what became of that business? Like the event, obviously in-person came back, and your partner was a bit crazy, you split up. Is that business even alive today?
It's alive in a small fraction. We do occasionally get events. We occasionally get people hit up. We can still handle these 10 to 20K events. We run some sponsor events, charity events, and all that. We have a big client that we manage a lot of virtual events on a different platform. We make decent money, nothing crazy, but we have it. There's no reason to shut it down because the maintenance costs aren't too crazy. and we have the
So it's
workers
just,
ready to go.
yeah, so it's just kind of like not a zombie business, but like
It's a maintenance
maintenance
business.
business. So what's it called?
It's called Ace Virtual Agency.
Good for you, man. So what does that pay you in not pay you, but how much top line revenue does that do now per year?
Depending on the year, we can make anywhere from 60 to 200.
Can I ask how much is top line is No Degree doing as of like your latest month?
Last few months has been crazy, but usually I hit 100 to 200 with No Degree.
Per month or per year?
Oh man, per month I would love.
All right. So you're doing a 200K business, like call it 150.
Let's say 150, reasonable.
150. Does No Degree take a ton of your time and effort?
No Degree takes a ton of my time because I'm trying to really grow it. So I could hit that 100K a month kind of thing.
Right. What I'm hearing is that you have a business that has the potential to do 200K with barely any effort, and a business that's doing a little bit less than that with a ton of effort.
So I'll tell you that business with no effort can potentially be 50 to 100K. With a lot of effort can get to that 200K. Again, it depends on the year, but it's one of those things that it takes a ton of effort to get to 200K. No Degree, I can do no effort and make like that 60 to 100K, like no effort, but it takes time. If I scale things, I have competitors hitting 100K months.
So you think there's more potential with the No Degree business?
100% more potential, more scalability. At the end of the day, yeah, the virtual events is cool, but I'm not like, people aren't excited. People are like, wow, No Degree. Hey, my cousin doesn't have a degree. I'm focused on growing the YouTube channel, focused on growing a merch line. Like I could really take it where I'm competing with these big companies. Because look, if I even get to a point, even have 100 jobs a week and charge $100 for that, that's 10K a week, that's 40K a month, and that's not a lot of effort. That's a digital product, and that's not even counting the resume line and all that. So I want to compete with Indeed. I want to compete with those companies, and really, that's what drives me.
Which business is higher margin?
It depends on the services because
blended. Let's say you do just an average across all the services with the app.
I would say No Degree is the higher margin now. It used to be the virtual events because we used to have, when it was hitting those 70K months, crazy high margin. We were hitting like 60-70% margins. The issue is that the business is not there anymore. Now it's very time intensive. And again, growing is very tough in that business.
Understood.
If I did a resume for a client, got the client a job, and then that's how we got our client. So the No Degree business is the reason why we even got that client.
So let's switch gears back to No Degree in full. What are all your sources of revenue, your business model? So obviously you do services like resume building. How else do you make money?
I want to scale that aspect because you make good money off placing candidates, right? You approach startups and all that. We're looking at some grants. So structuring the company in a way that there's some grants that help people. If you help people find jobs, you get paid. So I'm looking to do that. I've done workshops, I've done keynotes, and now I'm really focused on YouTube. Someone very close to me, his best friend grew a YouTube channel to over 260,000, made like 400K off the channel. And he just grew another channel by like 40K in a month, and it just hit 50K in less than 2 months. And he's, we'll work out a rev share, but I can help you grow a channel. So I grew Twitter. Twitter was absolute waste. Like I should have stopped growing that platform. Twitter is just full of broke people who are fighting all the time. I should have grown a TikTok account or YouTube because I have friends who have TikTok accounts. They drive heavy traffic, and that would have solved my problem. Twitter is like, I had a tweet go viral, hit 250K views. I only got an extra 300 downloads on my podcast. So I'm like, you guys won't even consume my free stuff. You guys are just the worst users of all time.
So social media, you have grown to 40,000+, 45,000 LinkedIn followers, 13,000 Twitter followers. You said that's a waste of time. It looks like your YouTube channel is small. I mean, it's bigger than mine, but it's still pretty small. Like 1,000 subscribers, and you have a ton of visibility and traction on Reddit. I know Reddit's a little bit different, and I'm not sure that you do use it as a lead generation tool. Maybe I can let you direct the conversation on promoting and social media. I guess the super open-ended question to start is, how do you think about social media and self-promotion? How do you look at it as a tool for you?
Before I was like, a lot of Reddit users are icky about self-promotion, right? But as I've grown, promote yourself. Too many people have this shame, like it's not right to promote yourself. They associate you with salespeople, and salespeople have a negative stigma. But if you don't promote yourself, who will? You need to be your own biggest promoter. I think it's okay to share things about your business. There's nothing wrong. Too many people hide their businesses. They're too scared. There's nothing wrong with that. Share what you bring to the table. People need to do that. You need to know how to do it in a creative way. The reason I was able to grow on Twitter was I injected humor. Like I was funny about it. And LinkedIn, I was, again, funny about it. So I had a personality, because then people liked you, and they build a little trust, remember you, and you're recognizable. Find your unique way of promoting yourself.
Let's take LinkedIn for an example, because you said Twitter was kind of useless. LinkedIn is obviously a very powerful organic growth platform. How did you get started, and what was your process for finding your rhythm, finding your voice, figuring out what you were going to talk about, what works, what doesn't, right? How did you tell you about that?
I used to do 100 comments a day, and I used to do that for months straight. So then when I created content, I already had this existing community that supports. So I had posts do it really well and find your own style. I think like Reddit is good to learn copywriting. I read Reddit posts for years, and those good posts have that energy. I picked up inspiration. Another thing that helped me was I was part of Toastmasters. And so that helped my public speaking, and that helped me find my voice and be comfortable with it. So then when I started writing on LinkedIn, I wrote how I speak and how I tell stories. So it's really learn how to tell stories, learn storytelling format. And there was one book I think that I read called Everybody Writes by Anne Handley. It's a good book. One thing I learned is one word can be a sentence. One word can be a paragraph. So it's learning how to break up text. Think about how you tell stories, where you pause, what you share together, what you don't, and just commenting, creating videos. I was live streaming. So I set the record for the longest LinkedIn live first. 4 hours is the limit. So I did 4 hours. I did that 7 times, and it just cuts you off. So that's how I learned that limit. And I was really active, collaborating with other people, networking. And that's why I was able to grow Twitter well. Twitter wasn't always useless. Once Elon came over, more bots, and he ruined the platform, at least for me and for what I needed it for.
Right. So on LinkedIn, you started by just posting content. I'm on like a weekly schedule. I'm just posting stuff. And obviously a lot of it goes into the abyss. And over time, you start to build traction. But you're saying that arguably more important to engage rather than...
Let's say I get a post 5 likes. I'd go to each of those 5 likes. I'd like 3 of their posts. If I got 2 comments, I'd leave 3 comments. Now those 5 people are more likely to engage, and then 2 other people are more likely to engage. Eventually, you start getting 20 likes. Now, obviously, you can't go to all 20, but I'd say, here's a new person. Let me go like them. Let me go comment. I'd send a DM like, hey, really appreciate you liking my post. And people are like, hey, I like what you're doing. And keep on doing that. Like, people want to get this 100, 200, 400, 500 likes, but they won't even 3 posts of the people engage with them. And this is a big problem in social media. Like, I see people on LinkedIn, they'll hit me up. They're like, I'm not a jerk. I'm going to really start telling people, yeah, like I have 10 times more followers than you and you don't even engage with me. Like, why would someone else engage with you? Unless your content's absolutely phenomenal, you can't get away with that. You have to engage and be a part of the community. That's what people don't understand. Like, they want all the value from a community, but they don't want to deliver anything.
Even if you don't find that posting organic stuff that's not engaging with others, like, of course, engaging is important, but what about just the raw value of posting stuff that's valuable?
It's tough because I've seen people try, like maybe on a YouTube or like a TikTok, but like it worked on Twitter too. I used to do 100 comments a day, and the 100 comments on LinkedIn were more thoughtful. They weren't like amazing congrats. They were like a sentence or 2 showed I read the post. Twitter, I just did like happy crying emojis, fire emojis, hundreds, and it worked because, again, think about it. Only 1% of people engage. What is it? Out of 100 social media users, only 10% even engage, and only 1% post. So only 10% engage, right? To get 10 people engaging, 90 people have had to seen it, and some of them have liked it and not engaged. Whereas think about this. If you see, now that we interacted, and you see my post, even if it's not the best, you'll be like, Jonaed was on my podcast. He's there. He's liking my stuff. I'll give it a like. Think about that. The majority of people are going to do that. So some people can get away with that, but you do way better if you engage and you have valuable content. The sky's the limit. Why would you lose out on that?
So how long did it take you to start getting real traction on LinkedIn?
I started February 2019. I was getting traction like relatively quickly within a few months because I understood the game. I understood what worked on other social media platforms and went crazy at it. It was a time when LinkedIn was not competitive at all. Now it's much more
People still say it's not as competitive as some of the other social media platforms. You think it was way less before?
Oh my God, dude. You just needed like a quarter of a brain to succeed. There are people who are succeeding. If you see a lot of people with LinkedIn followers, you're like, how did they get it? They grew in like 2019 to 2020 when it was way less. It's still, again, it's tougher, but you're competing with accountants. You're competing with boring people. It's so much easier to do well, but the algorithm is much harder now.
So you put a high degree of value on engagement and original valuable content posting.
Yeah, it's a social media platform. People forget the social aspect. Look, I do well even on TikTok. I do well just by engaging with others because they see my stuff. They're more likely to engage. They watch my stuff, and that's how you get collabs. That's how you build relationships. Through LinkedIn, right? I hired a team of 30 for the virtual events business when it was really popping. something. And the first person who was responsible for a good amount of those hires, she watched the live stream. I met my business partner through a live stream. It's always good to be active in these communities. Meeting great people is its own reward.
On the flip side, let's talk about haters. Have you gotten any hate? How do you handle it?
Man, I had one. I searched myself. So obviously you'll get people like, oh, you must be lying. You have something, this and that. And look, that's a part of it. You're going to get it. I remember one person was like, hey, there's this no degree guy. He says it, but the jobs require X, Y, Z. And I responded back and they didn't respond. But who cares? At the end of the day, people will say you're not genuine. You're not this, you're not that. But you're going to see a lot of those people spend all their time being skeptical. And it's, who cares? They're not trustworthy people themselves. And I think oftentimes it's a reflection on them. Like if you don't have any haters, you're not reaching enough people.
Yeah. Or saying something that's not necessarily controversial enough, but like you're not saying something contrarian enough or adding enough unique value.
Yeah. And I think you got to take a stand. I'll say you don't need a college degree to be successful. Sometimes I'll even go further. I'll be like, there should be a way to get away with not having college degrees, because if someone can pass the bar without going to law school, they're smarter than your average lawyer who had to go through professors. I'm even more radical in that I'll say there should be a pathway for a doctor to get in without a college degree, but it should be very rigorous. If a doctor could pass the boards without going to medical school, then they are exceptional, right? I do still think they need to take the required compliance and labs and safety and all that stuff. But I do think there should be paths that work for people who are pure talent. There should be ways, because what if someone's 40 and they want to do this? Do they have to wait 8 years to really get it? There should be multiple ways for people to break into careers.
Yeah, that point you made about the doctor thing is like a deep one. And I don't know that I can report it outright. Like on this, one of the values of creating another path for people is democratization and leveling the income playing field. Because what if someone would be a great doctor and the only path to get there is this high cost of going through higher education? You know, that's like a huge problem to solve, right? We're being very theoretical now, but yeah, man, I see that's like a huge value proposition of your mission. You're doing 100 comments a day, you're doing resumes, you're growing the business, you're managing a team, you got the events thing. Like, how do you spend your time as an entrepreneur and not get burned out?
Man, it's just wake up, work all day. Thankfully, I enjoy the work, but it was a lot. There are 4 types of skills, and this is what I share with entrepreneurs. There's skills you're good at that you like doing, skills you're good at that you don't like doing, skills you're bad at that you like doing, and skills you're bad at that you don't like doing. The first is your zone of genius. That's where you want to focus on. Thankfully, I was doing work that I was good at and I enjoyed doing, so you could do that a lot. You wonder, how does a guy work 10 hours a day? It's, he's doing what he enjoys doing and he's good at it. The things you're good at that you don't like doing, these are your burnout skills. So people like, hey, Edward, you're good at speaking. You should go network all the time. Just because you're good at speaking doesn't mean you want to network all the time. Just because you're good at math doesn't mean you want to do research all day. Just because you're good at editing doesn't mean you want to edit all day. You want to minimize that to avoid getting burned out. The things you're bad at that you like doing, those are your skills you want to improve on. Hey, I'm bad at this, but I want to get better. So you want to improve on that. And the things you're bad at that you don't like doing, you outsource. So I found the things that I was good at that I like doing. The interesting thing is there are some days I'm doing 12 hours of resumes. And the reason is I truly enjoy talking to people. I enjoy asking them questions and seeing the transformation. I enjoy coaching. So I could do that 10, 12 hours a day. That's a skill that I have. I hate cleaning. Like my room's a mess. So you have me clean for 10 minutes, I'm like done, physically drained. But it's like, hey, can you do 2 resumes? Sure, that's something I like doing. You got to figure out what is that? And that's how I'm able to do it. I get in my sleep. Like I didn't sleep much today, but the other day I slept like 11, 12 hours. I'll focus on the one thing that I'll make sure to get to the best of my ability. I'll try to average my 7 to 9 hours and I'll sneak in a 10 to 12 hours here and there.
That's a pretty interesting framework for how to think about spending your time. Unfortunately, you still do need to do some of the stuff you don't like to do.
So here's the thing. I was getting paid to do the things I was good at that I like to do. So I would pay people to do the things I didn't like to do. Yes, there are some times, but it was minimal. It wasn't like 5 hours a day doing stuff I don't like to do. Maybe it was like an hour. And that's much easier to do because that hour holds you back because it drains you.
Totally agree. The reason I asked the question is because you were like, I'm doing 100 LinkedIn comments a day. Do you have a framework for saying, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours every morning doing LinkedIn comments, and then I'm going to spend 3 hours every afternoon doing resumes? How do you keep it sustainable?
Yeah. So there's something as an entrepreneur I call dead time. You want to optimize this. Let's say you're like, hey, can we this podcast? I'm running 10 minutes late. Okay. I'm commenting on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm online waiting for food. Commenting on LinkedIn. I'm like cooking, commenting. You sneak in 3 to 5 comments here, 5 to 10 comments there, and it adds up throughout the day. So for comments, you got to incorporate throughout your day. There's, hey, you know what? I got 5 minutes here. My meeting ended early. I used to do just 5 minutes straight of fire emojis. Boom, boom. And you could get like 20 of them out in 5 minutes. Just quick. Now for resumes, I'm on my client's time. So I'm like, hey, when are you available? Most clients are doing evenings. So I'm scheduling things around that. Hey, the client, I was expecting to do 3 hours. I finished in 2.5. Cool. I'll do some 30 minutes of comments. So it's like organically incorporating it throughout your day. Hey, I have a few minutes. I'm going to go to this thing. That's going to be my autopilot kind of thing.
Got it. That's an interesting framework, man. We overlap a little bit. I work a little bit differently in that I'm very highly structured and I have problems context switching. I feel like to really effectively get a big squeeze out of the dead time, you need to be good at context switching. For me, I'm just like, I need 30 minutes to slide into deep work. But yeah.
I 100% agree with you. However, here's what I'll say. Once you start doing comments are not deep work. Like fire emojis are not deep work. A sentence or two on LinkedIn is not deep work. If you have to use the bathroom in the middle of something, it's not context switching. You've done it so many times that you don't have to think about it. So you want to make sure that the things you're doing don't really force you to context switch. Right? Like you're done. And one thing I'll tell you, and I know the problem, there's 2 types of schedule. There's the worker schedule and the manager schedule. This is why corporate has a big issue. Your manager has meetings all day and their day is broken up into 30-minute chunks. Whereas a builder needs to have 2 to 4 hour chunk. If they're building for 4 hours and you have a meeting in 30 minutes, it messes up that whole 4 hours. So I always say context switching is hard, but it's more about, hey, I do my deep work. Here's my break. Here's my that. And that's when I'll comment. Or I finished it early. That's when I'll comment. And you don't need to context switch while like you're waiting for your food at Chipotle. You don't need to be like, oh, I need 30 minutes to write comments on LinkedIn. So it's more about organically building the habits and doing those things and incorporating it like that.
I know that I wake up, I'm an early morning person. I'm not a late night guy. So I wake up sometimes even before 5, but usually between 5 and 6. I'm winding down around 8 p.m. Between 6 and noon is my sharpest hours. That's why I'm recording this podcast. And I'm hyper protective of that time. Like 0 meetings, notifications off. I'll only respond to notifications if it's like something super important, like a lead comes in. Any intellectually demanding work, like creating content, writing copy, strategizing, planning will be during that time, and other shit will be in the afternoon. So it sounds like comment writing can be in the afternoon.
Yeah, after look, I tell people, once you find your thing, stick to it. Don't let someone else tell you need to do it this way unless you know it's going to work. Do it outside that time because comments are not a hyper-focused thing. It's more get the highest value work added. This is okay in the afternoon. I want to do, I'll do 5 minutes here. And remember, you don't have to do 100, but you have to do more than 0. That's what I tell people. It's like,
that's 365 comments a year.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's not hard, right? I tell people, you want to get something that you don't give. You want people to like, you want people to comment, but you yourself don't do that. There's some psychological thing that people need to work out. I've seen people who don't give comments unless they're such phenomenal content creators. But even then, like on platforms like LinkedIn, people eventually everybody talks about him, that like everybody's supportive of him and he doesn't support anyone back. And eventually it's like, yo, we're going to stop supporting you. That's your own thing. And when we see him comment, we're like, oh my God, you commented? When you're networking, you want to see interaction. You want to see people who give back. You don't want to be the person who's only looking to take and not looking to give back to the community.
Let me ask a couple more questions about No Degree, and then I want to switch gears into a segment on mental health every episode. Sure. What do you wish you knew before you started it?
I wish I knew the business partner comment that I made. I wish I knew how to have those tough conversations and cut people off earlier. And I wish I had more savings. If I were to ever do it again, get those savings up because it just allows you to pursue things because it takes sometimes 1 to 4 months to build out a revenue generating portion of the business and you're not making money. But if you don't have money saved up, you're always stuck in this trap. I got to take these meetings to serve these clients to survive, but I can never grow because I'm always too busy serving clients and I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have enough money to pay someone to help. And growing a business requires a lot more energy, a lot more extra money than it does to maintain a business.
Right. So those are 2 kind of entrepreneurship philosophies, right? Yep. Definitely valuable. What about the business itself, though? Just learn and grow and dynamics of the business.
I think business-wise, what do I wish I knew? Because I knew a lot going in. I wish I knew more about sales. I learned a lot about sales, and I'm thankful that I learned it. But I wish I knew more about sales. If I were to start over, learn more about sales, and I wish I knew more about marketing. Like I knew an okay amount to do well. But if I knew those two, I would have been able to grow way faster at certain points.
Why do you say that? The only way to learn sales and marketing, you can do some research and you should, but you got to just start doing it. Ultimately, that's the only way you can get that knowledge you wish you had.
I will say that for sales, yes, you will learn, but there are some solid sales books that you can go into so you understand these principles. Yes, you still have to work them out, but knowing those things, for example, if you want to sell high ticket, and this is something that it would have saved me a lot of time, you avoid talking about price until later in the conversation. If someone's not sure, if you're selling lower ticket, bring up price early. I would have avoided a lot of sales meetings with people who are never going to pay and save much more time. Now I have some things where when I'm working with people, if someone higher up reaches out to me, I'll hop on a call. If someone early in their career, I'll straight up talk about price before I'll say, I'll still give you a free call. And that just avoids people. And then I wish I would have learned how to raise my prices early. Like it would have just made a big difference. Like instead of, I would have hit those 10K months way earlier and I had more capital.
What sales books do you recommend?
I have Never Split the Difference. So good.
Most business books are bad. And there are, of course, some good and timeless ones out there, but Never Split the Difference. It's just so legit. Split the Difference is a book on negotiating written by Chris Voss, negotiation for the FBI. And they go through real life and death negotiations and how it was handled and how that's applicable to negotiating with someone in business. And it's just,
So Outbound Sales No Fluff by Ryan Rezert. I'll share it in the chat with you. And then
put it in the comments below, by the way.
Yeah. And then Outbounding, Win New Customers with Outbound Sales and End Your Dependence on Inbound Sleep by William Skip Miller. So those are some phenomenal sales books.
One side note, I am a big fan, if you have capital, on paying to acquire skills. So if you don't have capital, you should read and hustle. But if you do have some capital, if you can find a valuable, good consultant that you trust, having them coach you, it's like the analogy of sports. Like with you, you're a wrestler, right? Like, would you try to learn how to wrestle without getting a wrestling coach?
Let me tell you, and this is the biggest thing in entrepreneurship. Too many people are just like, oh, everything's free. What I've learned, people value what they pay for. I have done over 100 resumes for free where I spent 2 to 3 hours with them. Let me tell you, 70% don't even tell me they got a new job. I was like, dude, I spent hours with you. You can't even let me know. I rarely get referrals out of them. They don't even like my stuff. These are people who I took from broke retail to corporate, working in amusement parks, and they don't. Whereas the people who pay me $500, $1,000, $1,500, I get more referrals out of them. They engage with my stuff and they respect me more. So I always say, look, if you're serious, make sure you're getting value, right? Don't just pay someone for the sake of paying someone. There are a lot of people who are not worth their money. But once you learn how to pay for others, you'll see that more people are willing to pay for you. It's a mindset shift.
Yeah, man. Totally agree. So last question on No Degree. I did some research on the job posting, and it looks like some of them are jobs that wouldn't require a degree. Some of them even say in the original post, like 4 years computer science requirement. What's the deal with that?
So look, you don't really need a computer science degree to work these jobs. Can you do the job? Have you proven that you've done the job before? Because that's ultimately what most decent hiring managers care about. So even though it's say the 4-year comp sci degree, sometimes they'll slip through, you don't need a comp sci degree. It's not like healthcare where it's like, hey, you need a nursing degree to get this license and blah, blah, blah. So a lot of sales jobs, a lot of marketing jobs, right? They may even say it, but I've had clients get these jobs despite it saying must have degree. They'll be like, don't worry about it. That's just the job description. The hiring manager likes you. You can do the job. So don't stop yourself unless it's an industry like healthcare where certain things must have degrees.
Yeah, you're kind of enabling people to hustle and break down some mental barriers that they might have.
Job seeking is like dating, right? You ask any guy, girl's gonna say, I want a guy who's 6'5". Guy's gonna say, I want this. And you look at their actual spouses or their actual girlfriend, boyfriend, they don't hit all their things. So I always say, like, they hit some minimum, right? But you just have to shoot your shot. And if you're getting all rejections, then figure out what are the gaps. Do I need to go to the gym? Do I need to improve myself? Do I need to pick up the skills? So it's like certifications and all that. And now it's companies are more friendly. And again, there will be some people who are like, hey, some girls who are like, if you're not 6 feet, I'm not talking to you. Forget that. There are other people. So just like there are some jobs that are really going to be like, hey, I need this degree. There's going to be someone else who's not fully gung-ho about it.
Yeah, I hear that, man. That's a great attitude. So let's briefly, I want to talk about mental health and entrepreneurship, and then I have some rapid fire questions I have. Mental health, like your journey is pretty interesting. Now that I learned more about you, it sounds like you've actually had more success here and there along the way than I originally thought. This has been a great conversation. But it seems like you've taken a lot of steps to minimize the likelihood that you find yourself in a difficult situation. You waited to quit your job. You switched from actuarial science or whatever you were doing into a job that wasn't as demanding. You moved at home with your parents, right? I know maybe you didn't save up as much money as you wish, but you had some money saved up, right?
Yeah.
Have you been on the mental health journey that so many entrepreneurs are accustomed to? Or have you just been able to maintain this positive attitude that I'm seeing here on this call the whole time?
I'll be honest, you'll have ups and downs. And I think some of the hardest things are business partners. When you partner with business partners that are some of your best friends and they don't live up to expectations, that is hurtful. I can't believe I made these sacrifices. I took a huge income cut while you guys are having 6-figure careers and you're not putting in the work. Trust me, that is tough. I don't trust people the same way. I'm much more ruthless than I was before. If it's not working, it's not working. I'm just not going to put time into it. And I'll tell people up front. Now I'm much more straightforward. People ask for feedback, I'll give it to them. They'll be like, hey, I haven't heard from you. I was like, yeah, you never supported me. Why would I hit you up? You're not here for me. Initially, it'll hurt in that moment for that person, but it'll strengthen the relationship in the future. If it ruins the relationship, that relationship was never going to grow. I have fewer relationships, but I have much stronger relationships of people who I know, hey, they're going to look out for me. They're going to do what they can. So you're going to have ups and downs. And there's times you're like, yo, you're going to have your parents. What are you doing? You'll have other people like, oh, you left a good job and you have to deal with it. Thankfully, I deal with it and I'm a very confident person. But again, it is going to change your friendships. It's going to change you as a person. I was much more positive before. The only thing that keeps me going is you have to be a little delusional to have big dreams, right? There are easier paths. And for me, it's like, I still have that thing where it's like, hey, I'll eventually be $1 billion company. I'll eventually be number one and I'll do whatever it takes. That's what I dedicated my life to. That's the sacrifices I'm willing to make. I'm an assistant wrestling coach and I used to wrestle. That's the mindset I bring in, where you're always going, always keeping at it, and you're not going to quit. You're going to stay in the game.
And you, even though you have such a positive, strong attitude about that, which I think is critical and a requirement, had you not struggled with imposter syndrome at any time? Like, how the hell am I going to make this work?
So I've helped people with their imposter syndrome. I've never had imposter syndrome. Learning and growing up, I never understood it. Now I'm older, I understand it. I've never had imposter syndrome. Yeah, I'm lucky in that sense. I just can't wake up early. That's my weakness, right? Waking up early. I have something called delayed sleep-based disorder. So I have a shifted circadian rhythm. So for me, I'm not a morning person. That's another reason why I sucked at corporate. It wasn't easy. I was somewhat of a people pleaser. So I had to deal with that. You don't have to please everyone. It's okay to say no. It's okay to be straightforward. That was my challenge that I had to overcome.
What about some of your darkest moments, right? Like, you haven't had imposter syndrome. You're very lucky. You have a very positive attitude, which is incredible. But surely along these ups and downs, there have been some real low lows. Can you see them?
I had a business partner who barely did any work. We're not friends anymore. He used to be one of my best friends and we're not friends anymore. And people say, get over it. Some people say, oh, this and that. And I was like, I'm not going to get over it. I quit my job. I had a tax return of $14,000 while this guy's making 6 figures traveling the world. I was like, people are allowed to have that, but it just changes a lot where you have people who you thought were your friend. And it's not necessarily they're bad people, but they just weren't good to me. And I think that's something that is really hard. I wish I had those tough conversations earlier and I wish I had cut this off instead of giving people a chance and giving them too much leeway. You just really learn a lot and it changes how you trust people. It changes how you view people. It changes how you approach partnerships because I was very free flowing. Hey, yeah, well, now it's, yo, what's the commitment? What are you going to do? If it's not working, when are you going to leave? What are you going to put in? Because I used to be like, hey, I don't mind. I'll put in 60%, 70% of that. But now I'm just much more, yo, we got to get it done. Much more ruthless. And I legitimately hate people who take advantage of people who are putting their time in business. I was like, there's nothing wrong if you're doing everything you can. But I see so many people who screw over good-hearted business people who are really just trying to take care of the people around them and win together. And it changes you because now it's screw it. I'm going to win with the people around me. If you don't win, that's your own fault because you get your paycheck. I don't get any of that. So much more ruthless.
I can hear it in your voice, man. Everyone goes through their own journey. And on that journey, there is an experience like the one you described that changes you or hardens you in a certain way. I had a similar thing with the business partner. I won't get into it here, but it's definitely changed my view on how to handle things up front, number one. And number two, just about business and entrepreneurship in general. Growing up, all the adults were like, business is so hard. Business is like war. Like, it changes people, ruins relationships. And I never really got it. Platitudes that that was a platitude, but it was one of those like common sayings that I kind of just accepted was true. Now that I'm into my second business, I'm like, yeah, no wonder like people, like business people can err on the side of like coming off as dick. Not that the bad people are trying to be a dick or trying to be insulting or anything. It's just like, they're like
We learned.
kind of fizzled them to be that way.
Yeah, and we learned the hard way. We learned it. We were trusting. We were flexible. We got burned. And now you'll still maintain some of that good nature, but you'll have barriers and guards to make sure if this happens again, what's my plan B? What's my protection?
Let's transition to a couple rapid fire questions if you still got some time.
I got time.
So, what do you personally suck at? Like your biggest weakness, and how do you manage it in your business and as an entrepreneur?
Oh, I suck at admin work. I suck at organization. I'm not an organized, structured guy. So I have a team and they help me with those little things. I like talking to people. I like working with people. I like working on strategy. I like working ideas. So they'll help me with that aspect. And I thankfully have a team that keeps me in check.
How did you find that team and build it over time?
Yeah, it's networking. I found them through LinkedIn, through referrals.
Are they US based or in another jurisdiction?
One of my business partners in the US in the virtual events business. Then I have a worker in Belize, another worker who was originally in Venezuela and now is in Argentina. They're my crew, but my YouTube partner is in actually driving distance from me, like 45 minutes east in Long Island.
In distance of you, man.
I got to make a trip somewhere out there, see you in person. That's my team. I have a pretty global team all over, and it was just through referrals and just organic. It's not like I sought them out. It just happened.
Next question. Every starting entrepreneur, particularly starting entrepreneurs, are bombarded with advice. What is some of the best and the worst advice that you've received?
I think one of the best sales advice that, at least in my industry, he was like, don't negotiate. Your price is your price. He said, do payment plans, have different plans, but don't negotiate, because someone who's looking for discounts discounts you and discounts themselves. They're not serious about and it's also you haven't demonstrated your value enough. Sometimes it's you haven't done a good job selling the value proposition. Other times it's a reflection on them and you can't change them. And so that client's not right for you. Whereas I've had people like, oh, $1,000, how do I pay? And then other times I get people who are like, you've been unemployed for 6 months. Every month you're unemployed, you're losing out on anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 a month after taxes. And you don't want to pay like 500, you don't want to pay 1,000. Okay, that's not my problem. Worst advice is like people who tell you grow all the social media platforms at the same time. It's always told by people who have never grown a social media account. I would say focus on 1 or 2 platforms, grow them. And then when you get traction, grow the next platform. Like it's just hard growing. It's maintaining is one thing, but growing a platform takes a lot of strategy and energy and a lot of nuance where you have to immerse yourself into the platform.
I've heard that from a lot of people. I've actually heard that the reverse of that. Buddy of mine, he's teaching me sales. His name's Guy. Put it very succinctly that good sales is holding the prospect accountable for what they already told you. You're losing money, but you don't want to pay for this thing. Like, what gives, right? You're going to ask for a discount. Do you not value the thing that's going to solve your problem?
Yeah.
That was one of the most valuable pieces of sales advice that I've heard. And you just echoed that.
You want me to share? I help people with salary negotiation. I'll tell people, how can you trust me to help you negotiate your salary if I'm not even getting my worth? And then people will be like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
That's the easy one. Obviously, we did discounts in B2B, right? Because it's a $20K contract. Yeah, we could do 19. When it's like 1,000, are you really going to look for 50? It's one thing if it's like a 10,000 in a different league. But for B2B discounts, sometimes you have to give and take. But for personal coaching and stuff, you got to avoid the discount strategy.
If you could speak to your younger pre-entrepreneur self, what would you scream at him to do?
I'd punch him in the face, right? I'd tackle him, punch him down. And then I'd be like, just because someone's your friend doesn't mean you can't stand up for yourself. And you got to leave it. That's the 100%. That's like the biggest mistake I've made. Like you got to be careful of business partners. Doesn't matter how close they are with you.
Dude, every person I talk to has one experience that highly colors every one of these answers. And I really like yours. What are some mistakes that you've made over your entrepreneurial journey that at the time seemed like the biggest deals in the world, like catastrophic, but actually looking back were quite trivial in the scheme of things?
I think sometimes you worry about a post, you worry about how people are going to take it, you worry about those things, but in the long run, as long as you're not like a dick, you'll be fine. Especially when you're creating content, you're always so critical, but at the end of the day, it's like, who cares? The other thing, actually, I would have not launched my podcast as early. I would have focused growing on YouTube. And I would have focused on starting a podcast later just because it cost me money. And I wish I should have focused building capital before, because I actually paused my podcast after passing 200 episodes to focus my energy on other things before I go back to doing that.
Has getting a podcast to 200 episodes generated any return for you?
It's generated leads, returns, it generated exposure. So I've gotten good out of it. But growing a podcast is harder than the podcast itself. Marketing a podcast is tough due to the nature of the podcast mediums. They're heavily dependent on retention, right? And using 70% retention to blow up on the platforms, which is not easy. If I were to go back, I would have probably focused on YouTube and then built authority and then built the podcast.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. My main channel is LinkedIn, and then I have this podcast, which is on YouTube, just because. Yeah. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions that people suffer from about entrepreneurship?
That it's all rainbows. Every time I see, oh, it's so easy. If you just sell like this $30 to 300 people, you'll make $1 million, some ridiculous amount. And it's not easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. Look, in sales, you got to sell the dream. You got to sell the transformation. But people online take it to extreme that all they're doing is showing you on this laptop on the beach. First of all, you're not going to put your laptop by the... I've never done that. And if you're doing that, you're watching an email. It's not like fun. If you do serious work, why would you work by the pool? You would focus on doing work and not getting distracted and go to a pool later. So it's like glamorizing entrepreneurship. I'm not a big fan. I tell people it's not for everyone. Some people say anybody can be an entrepreneur. I tell people, no, not anyone can be an entrepreneur. It's like saying anyone can be in the NBA. No, they can't. People push this idea that you can do anything, and you ask them, can you be in the NBA? No, you can't. It doesn't matter how hard I work. I will not be in the NBA. I'm past that. I don't have the height for it, and that's okay. What I tell people, there are things that everyone can do, and you got to figure out. And I think everybody, even if everybody could be an entrepreneur, it's a different journey for everyone. The average entrepreneur is above age 40, 50. Most people don't realize that. So take your time. Everyone can be a little entrepreneurial, but not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the 9 to 5. There's nothing wrong with having a stable job, health insurance, and benefits. Each person needs to figure out what's right for them.
What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs who have been struggling to find success for a long time?
I think entrepreneurs are somewhat delusional, but you also have to have that reality check. That's why I got 2 jobs while doing my journey. And that's why I'm currently interviewing with the company. And I'll take it and I'll do a good job. I'll build up capital. I'll gain experience. I'll do the stuff on the side before I come back. And there's nothing wrong with that. So many people think it sucks, right? You have to go back to a job. I'm a failure. Life happens. You're still in the game. And I think as long as you're in the game, as long as you're moving forward, doesn't matter you're full-time, you're not, you're moving forward. I really tell people that.
So where can people find you?
Check out the No Degree podcast. It's on your favorite platforms, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. I'm on LinkedIn, Jonaed, Jonaed. Last name Iqbal. I'm the only one with that name.
Believe it or not. I
own Jonaed.com, so I'm lucky I have that. So that's where I'm at. That would be the best way to find me. And then I'm growing on TikTok. It got banned and unbanned, but if you're at it, at No Degree, and then YouTube is like my main focus. So if anybody appreciate any subscribers on that channel.
Thanks for the promo. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. You have a great attitude and perspective about entrepreneurship, and you found some low but steady success, which I think is the right way to do it. I went big on my first venture and it didn't work. I've accepted that slow and steady success is the only real way. Yeah. Appreciate you responding to my Reddit post, and this has just been great, man. Thank you.
I appreciate you, Edward. This is fun.
Hey guys, did you know we are in the middle of an algorithm hunger crisis? The algorithm survives on a diet of likes, comments, and subscribes, but it has a bottomless appetite. Like and comment on this video and subscribe to my channel to make sure the algorithm doesn't go to bed hungry tonight. I'll see you in the next one.